Yeah. Okay. Geistrider here. It's been a long time. I actually got a fucking message from Twitch saying we missed you. You haven't streamed in a while. Uh, I was gonna check out Twitch anyway. I heard a lot about this cool Whispers feature. Good place to meet chicks. Uh, so clearly the clickbait fucking title of this video. I have in fact been banned for 30 days, and my whole creative hub got wiped out. Um, you'd think I'd be a little more upset about this, but it's all coming together in a very interesting way. There's a lot of moving parts here, and I think I know who's behind it. Oh my god, with the fucking music. So I think I know who's behind it. And let me just show you this here so there's no confusion. I started getting targeted by somebody, what is it, about 2 weeks ago, for an old livery that I actually made in Forza 4, imported in Forza 5. I haven't used it in years. I mean, I've used it on a couple streams, but it hasn't been public. And it had like bullet holes in it and blood splashes on it, which, like, they give you the fucking bullet hole decals in like the main game clip art. So not really sure what the intention is in giving them to you if you're not supposed to use them. Anyway, I don't really give a shit. They banned me for 72 hours though, and they were having a really hard time explaining why, like what the issue was, where the report came from. Finally, it like literally took 4 days for them to tell me why. Literally 24 hours after the ban was over, they finally told me, and they sent me a picture of this livery, and I'm like, where the hell did they get this picture from? And I realized it's like literally a thumbnail that somebody pulled from an old live stream or an old video of mine and sent to them. So I'm not even I didn't get banned for in-game content. I got banned for like a fucking video of in-game content from who knows how long ago. So I said to them, whatever, 72 hours is fine. I accept it. The livery, I should not have made a violent livery with the violent fucking vinyls that you gave me. Sorry, I guess. I accepted it. I didn't argue about it. I didn't make a big deal out of it. Then I sign in the other day and I get all these fucking messages. Inappropriate content removed. And I will add, the content was not removed. There was no content to be removed. The content didn't exist anymore. And I tried to explain this to them. They're like, the content will still exist. And I'm like, no, the content doesn't exist. You banned me for a picture somebody sent you from 2022, right? And to make it worse, now I sign in the other day to do my seasonal tuning, and I have all these fucking messages. And these are whatever inappropriate content removed. Again, the content was not removed, but what this was somebody submitting more pictures of the same exact livery from 2-3 years ago being used in YouTube videos, basically Twitch streams. So they just stacked up a bunch of fucking bans on me, all in the course of the same day, and it led to this one: all user content removed. I am in extreme violation of the Forza Code of Conduct, which is funny because I this is an old livery, and I'll take responsibility for it, but it's like I've had 2 years of like growing this as a big fucking thing, and like this is not a new infraction, and I've already accepted responsibility for it with the 72-hour ban. So to like compound the problem like this, to keep hitting me with suspension for the same violent vinyl content from years ago that is not public, is not even in my garage, uh, there's no balance here, right? So this is my creative hub is gone. They don't let me show it to you here, but it is gone. If you go look at it, I have all my followers, but all my tunes are gone. All mine, I only had one vinyl, but all my tunes are gone. And I had I had reached over 2 million on total downloads. I mean, who gives a shit? It's a nice looking number. But all the tunes themselves, like the online versions of them, are gone. And I had the top tune for so many cars. And though that would have went on forever, people downloading these highly rated tunes. Because if you know anything about the suggestion system, like it rates them in order of combined downloads, uses, and likes. So mine were way up at the top 5 on like at least 100 cars, 200 cars. I had the number one tune on dozens of cars that came out this year. I'd gotten really good at this. So those are like gone. Now, here's the thing: I still have the local versions of the cars, like of the tunes, rather. Like, check this out. This. I'm gonna fucking get. I don't care anymore. Give me a fucking copyright strike. This is so fucking annoying. This offline version of the game. Look what they're forcing me to put up with. This constant disconnection and fucking season changes.
Hey, Pedro. Festival playlist schedule is
I swear to God.
I'd keep your windows closed. It's dusty out there.
Shut up, Haley. If this does this a second time, I'm quitting now. I'm not even gonna keep talking. Yeah, almost did it. All right. So this car, right? I have one of the top tunes in the entire game. 130,000 downloads, like 500,000 uses, something like 100,000 hours of uses. I think that's gone. Like all those stats, the prestige, the 2 stars on the tune, I think that's gone. Like I had 2 stars globally on this tune. Most cars only show 1 star globally, but this had so many relative to the total engagement of the entire game that I had 2 global stars on it. That's fucking gone. Like I don't think I get these online versions of the tunes back. Now, I do have all the local versions of my tunes, and this is one thing I want to add. Not to bring up Seppi because I don't want to make a habit of talking about that guy, but he had the same thing happen to him getting his creative hub wiped, and he was very misleading about a couple of things. And one of them was that he could not complete his big mythical upcoming tuning guide because he didn't have his tunes anymore. But I know now for a fact that when they wipe your creative hub, you keep all your local files. Uh, Unless you're an idiot and you delete them all for some reason. But back when that happened, he would have had less than 500 tunes. There would have been no reason to. So that was bullshit. Just like the fact that he was sandboxing on his alt account, but it got his main account suspended. That is not how it works. It's completely unrelated. And I know this because last night, because I didn't have anything to do, because my season was fucked by this asshole piece of shit spam tuner who decided to start reporting me because I started poking around in their asshole piece of shit manipulative tuning fucking spam business. And I'm going to get into all that in the video, which I already started working on. I I created a dozen alt accounts last night. I played through the first 10 or 15 minutes of the game 12 times. It took me about 5 hours, and I created 12 alt accounts, and I figured out all kinds of ways to manipulate this game. And I'm going to go into that in the video. And this is obviously what happened. This is, you can target people for content removal. You can do tune boosting. I did all these things in the past 24 hours because I had, number one, I had nothing better to do. Number two, I wanted to see exactly, because this is what I've been trying to draw Playground's attention to with this fucking idiot spam tuner who has been manipulating the rankings with alt accounts and now has been attacking me personally with false reporting. Even if it's technically not false reporting, it's targeted reporting of the same shit over and over again. And it's timed to fuck up my seasonal tuning so they can gain an advantage over me. I am going to go into it. You can look at my channel. You can see exactly who it is. I made a video, a little joke video about them, and they got mad and they're fucking with me now. So it goes really deep, though, this person's use of alt accounts and how easy it is to manipulate the rankings on these tunes and just straight up dominate the basically the gameplay. You're dominating the interpretation of the game physics now. You're taking away people's options. Even if the options are not good, this person and other people, and now I see it's very easy to do, so are manipulating entire swaths of gameplay and turning it into their interpretation of it. Instead of people learning what is and going with the best interpretation or better interpretations of the physics, they're being force-fed people who are manipulating their way to the front of the line. Now, I started scratching the surface on this and calling people out directly and trying to talk to Playground directly, and I got retaliated against. So one of the things I wanted to do on the stream, and I'm going to do a little chaser build next, one of the things I wanted to do was show everybody that, yes, this is not a fucking cheating ban like Seppi, or I don't want to drag any of the other guys into it, but what these guys, Seppi and Igao, Nohana, and Pleb, and whoever, all right, without, it was a long time ago, who gives a shit, but what these guys were doing was accessing the game files in ways that gave them a better understanding of the physics, gave them access to things that we don't have access to, cars that are buried in the files, including all the new cars. And it is a fact that that's what Seppi was doing. He was accessing the cars so he would have tunes ready the day they came out. I don't want to speak definitively on what Nohana and Pleb were doing, but it is a fact what Seppi was doing, no matter how he tries to spin it or mislead you. But I don't care, I still kind of like Seppi. He's Forza drama. I live for it. But I wanted to show everybody that this was all inappropriate content related. This is not cheating related. This isn't me like doing anything anti-competitive, This is me with a jokey fucking livery from 2021 that now somebody is coming back and trying to fuck up my presence in the game and my reputation in the game. And I've sent an appeal to Playground and T10 saying, look, I already fucking agreed to the ban for this livery. I didn't argue about it. 72 hours was fine. It's perfectly acceptable. It really raises questions about your system if they keep stacking up like this and there's no cross-checking. There's no okay, we're not going to issue a ban because it's the same issue that's being brought up by the same person, or it's clearly being brought up from a different source. This is not in-game reporting. These are pictures that are being pulled from somewhere else, like from a long time ago, that are being strategically leaked to fuck me up at very specific moments, right? And when they introduced the whole warning system, I've blown through the warning now. And now all my content is gone because of the way this person did this. This is how easy it is to manipulate the game. You can have people's content removed, and I did it. I did all this last night. I tested it. You're going to see it. You're going to see how easy it is. I don't really give a shit at this point this is the 2024 version of putting a fake license plate on somebody's car and sending the JPEG off to fucking Playground. All you need is a couple people or a couple alt accounts, and you could cause fucking havoc in this game. And that's what happened to me. So, thanks, Playground. I had all night, instead of tuning cars and engaging your players and my 1,200 followers and blah, 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 instead of doing that and being productive, what I did instead was learn how to manipulate your game like all these other dirt bags that I've been trying to point out to you. I don't even know if there's any coming back from this, quite honestly. I'm not sure I want to play this fucking game anymore. At first, I thought this is fucked because I can't even win the cars. But I realized later that I can. You can win the cars offline even when you're banned. That was the big thing for me. I was like, am I going to miss winning exclusive cars because of this? Because I'll fucking quit right now. I'm not giving up that momentum. As corny as it sounds, it was a very important thing for me from day one to get every fucking car in order that they show up in the game. Be the original owner of it. I don't want to be sniping for a fucking Toyota Chaser 3 months from now. When I realized, though, that I could still get the cars, it took a lot of the edge off this. It's a lot annoying that they just fucking erase almost 3 years of my work. 2 million tune downloads. The uses, astronomical. Millions and millions of uses. Something like 50,000 kudos likes. And those are intentional likes. Those are not prompted likes. Those are somebody goes and seeks out your tune and likes it. Like, for what? You give me the same fucking penalty as Seppi got for fucking hacking cars? Like, I never did that. You've seen my videos on YouTube. You know how I get the number 1 tune every week? I fucking grind for it. I'm a good ass player. And when the fucking time changes and the new season starts, I get the fucking card before everybody. I'm the first one who has it, and I have the fucking tune done before any of you. Because I'm good. Because I'm good at getting the car. It takes me 5 fucking minutes where it takes everyone else 20 minutes. And my math has gotten so good that the tuning calculators copy my math. That's how I do it. I didn't do it by cheating. I didn't go time skipping. I don't own a fucking PC that could play this game. I didn't even own a PC that could play Forza 4. PC is really fucking this game up. I'll tell you that. Because all this alt shit, and I've seen it, is a lot easier on PC. I've seen people playing this game on PC. Switching between accounts is incredibly easy on PC. It is fucking annoying and time consuming. That being said, it still only took me about 10 minutes yesterday to get some content removed with false reporting. And it only took me about an hour to boost the tune in the rankings to the point where it became number 1. And that was with 10 alt accounts. Now, again, I'm not going to get into it, but this person that I'm talking about is using 10 alt accounts as a diversion to clog up the daily suggestions and simultaneously boost their own tune. It's crazy when you see it. It's crazy. So imagine you had 100 accounts and all you did was go in and boost this one tune all night or 2 or 3 tunes all night. That's what I witnessed yesterday, this morning, or whatever fucking morning it was. Yeah, Thursday morning. And I've seen it before, and I've told people about it before. I've been following this guy and this general trend. I've been following it for most of the year. And I pointed it out to that guy Shadows Bane a bunch of times. And most recently I pointed it out to Senu. I don't know what it was, a couple months ago. I told him, I said, I'm watching this guy in real time. Somehow somebody with less than, then this is back then, somebody had with like 300 followers, somehow has over 500 downloads between 4 and 7 a.m. Eastern time when there's only fucking 5,000 people playing the game. I'm like explaining this to Senu months ago. And at the time, I even sent this guy a message. I said, listen, I know what you're doing. You have to stop. Right? I was real cool about it. And this person didn't stop. So again, I explained all this again to Senu today because I like having some sort of, I don't really know Senu, but I trust him as a sort of third party to information in this game. A old friend of mine from this game, I haven't talked to him in a while, but Noobster, he's, I've talked about him on, so I haven't streamed in a long time, like I am still heavily involved in the social, sort of glue of this game though. Back then I talked about Noobster, and he's really I don't know at the moment, the game is sort of fragmented now, but he was very much one of the main components of the social glue of the game. Somebody who was really knew a lot of different people, different types of people, different groups of people in this game. That just sort of happens from being high up on leaderboards. Like if I send somebody a random message, it's usually someone who I see on leaderboards, and they obviously see me too because they just respond as if we know each other. Noobster spoke very highly of Senu, especially when Seppi attacked Senu in that video. Noobster's defense of Senu was one of the things that made me want to make that video about Seppi's video. Again, I'm really getting away from the fucking point, but point is, I trust Senu. I've explained all this shit to him in advance. I don't know, just to sort of like catalog as it goes. This is just because this is serious shit. If you give a shit about Forza Horizon, this is serious stuff. It's obviously not serious stuff in the grand scheme of things, with the fucking getting disconnected. It's not important stuff in the grand scheme of things. I've come to terms with the fact that I just lost all the flashy fucking badges of my success in this game. All my highly rated tunes are gone, but the tunes themselves are not gone, and that is what matters. I can't sit here and tell people like the fucking downloads don't matter. Stop making such a big deal out of your engagement, and then sit here and say, well, all the proof of my engagement is gone, and be mad about it. I don't know. I guess what I'm mad about is that, like, yes, I shared a tune in the first hour of this game that grew into one of the most widely used tunes in the entire game every day to this day. There's been an average of 4 or 5 people driving that tune for every second this game has been out. So yeah, now that like it's gone. Maybe people still have it in their garage, but people can't go through the process of like this is a game that's always attracting new people. And now I've been erased somewhat as a visible, prominent tuner on hundreds of cars. And that fucking sucks, you know? Nobody wants that. But at the same time, I didn't lose the physical work I did. And I was actually afraid to look because of how much Seppi kind of misrepresented that aspect of it. The tunes are not gone. Basically, it appears what they do is they do a server side wipe. They say you have uploaded stuff to our server that is questionable, and instead of worry that this is going to keep happening, we have deleted all your stuff. Unfortunately, they didn't delete everything. They left my fucking challenge card up, I guess. Why, I don't know. And they left up this stupid prefabs thing. I think they're trolling me because I was so annoyed when they add the fucking prefabs to the Creative Hub. I think they're just trolling me by leaving my prefab up. Also, I keep getting Rivals notifications even though I'm banned. So I don't know. This game's fucking broken. But it's really broken on the server side. And they're not taking the problem seriously of people manipulating shit with alt accounts. I know this for a fact because I have reported it through the reporting system, and the responses I've gotten have been along the lines of, we have not taken action because either there's no violation of policy or we can't find it. So I suspect it's something that they're just not interested in. Engagement is engagement. If somebody is going to use 100 fucking accounts all day, it is what it is, I guess. It's the same as 100 people to them. It's just fucking sleazy, though, and I'm going to blow the lid off it. And I really don't care if people go out and use this info to fucking target other people at this point. We'll see. I mean, I sent them a bunch of messages and said, look, please reinstate my stuff. Don't delete all the work I've done over the past 2 years since that vinyl was created and those photos were taken. Like, for what it's worth, I would have just served the fucking the thing back then. I would have been way more likely to accept it back then, looking ahead at having 2 years ahead of me in the game. But now it's like, feels like it's on its last legs anyway. They're starting to really repeat shit. Haven't seen a new car pack lately. You know, not really sure where this is going. If they don't give me all my tunes back, then the way I continue to play the game is just going to be completely different. You know, it's definitely not going to be as involved or as engaged or as aggressive. And that's a fucking shame for them. Like, I don't know, man. Like, your game is like, you're lucky you have players like me. This is just fucking brain dead. So, Playground, if anyone from Playground is watching or listening, if you go home this weekend, or T10 or whoever the fuck is making this decision, if you go home this weekend without resolving this, then I'm going to sit here and I'm going to work on this video about how to fucking manipulate and cause chaos in your game with reporting people and boosting shit and all kinds of other shit. Tell you the quickest way to make an alt account. I'm going to go through it. I'm also I got to go back. One of the problems right now is I haven't played the game, the alt accounts through far enough to unlock rivals, but I have to go back and do that tomorrow night. Should only take another 5 or 10 minutes on each one. And then I want to see if I can do the same thing to leaderboard entries. So yeah. I don't know. I feel like this is what the supervillains in fucking Batman movies feel like, right? They feel like they've been backed into a corner. Like, I don't know. I was just doing my thing and you came along and fucking fucked me up and made me feel like a villain. So now I got nothing better to do, I guess. So that's where things stand. I still have, and you know what I said to Seppi back when he got it fucking shit fucked up? I said to him in a YouTube comment, I was like, well, and this is because I knew what he was up to. I knew he was getting the cars early. He was so mad about you Grundy's engagement that he started shortcutting. You know what I mean? And I get it because I'm kind of fucking mad about this other guy. But I didn't start shortcutting. I started going after the problem. That's the difference. And I got retaliated against. Seppi just tried to get around the problem, and Playground pulled the fucking rug out, is what happened. But I don't know. I feel him. But I said to him at the time, they didn't take your followers. You know what I mean? Like, you put out a fucking tune tomorrow, and it'll still do better than like 99% of people. Still got 20,000 fucking followers, you know? So a lot easier to stomach a reset like that. I say you could stand a soft reset. Because he was doing something unethical, in my opinion. More unethical related to the core of what the game is, gameplay ethics, than like my Maserati Levante livery that looked like it got shot up in a carjacking or something. So, that's what we'd call like a fucking tertiary unethical gameplay, having an offensive livery. Whereas like a fundamental unethical gameplay would be tuning cars before people have access to them. I can't be more clear about this distinction. Not to keep dredging it up. Okay. So the first part of the video is over. The clickbait part of the video is over. Now we're going to actually, since, I wasn't able to share a tune this week for the Chaser, I'm going to do a free one. I'm going to do a tune on the house. We're going to do it right here on the fucking stream. Oh my God, this song. I have to turn this off. Okay. Toyota Chaser drift build. What fucking year is it? Here we go. Toyota Chaser, very popular entry-level drift car for the JDM boys and girls and everything in between. So how do we make a drift car? First thing you want to do is turn down the music a little bit so you can hear yourself talk. Let's turn it down to a nice numerology sort of number, like 33. All right. Now, traditionally, a drift car is not going to be all-wheel drive, and I'm going to catch some hate for even calling this a drift car. I think the again with the fucking disconnections, I think the technical term for people who give a shit about this sort of stuff is power sliding for all-wheel drive cars, but we're just going to call it an all-wheel drive drift car. And the first thing we're going to do is, right now the PI doesn't matter to me, but let's pretend the PI matters, that the final product matters, that we want to keep it capped under a certain amount. Since this is just sort of an open world drift car, it doesn't, but let's assume that we're building a drift car that we want to cap out at S1. And because of that, you want to make sure it's built around your drift tires. And you don't need drift tires for a drift car. They don't help in any sort of way, but in the game aesthetics, they do smoke more. And in terms of selling the concept of the tune, the build, and what it looks like and what people are looking at on the info screen, you're going to want to choose drift tires. You're going to want to choose any drift accessory there is, because just the word drift is going to sell the tune to somebody. If you start putting, now you might make the best tune in the world with a rally suspension and fucking stock tires and this and that's fine. But like somebody might pass it over. So we're not only getting into good tuning, but we're getting into good build psychology basically for sharing stuff. So if you're worried about PI, tires is one of the places that it stacks up the most. So let's get the tires out of the way, and then we know what we could do with power and weight afterward. So we are going to choose the drift tires, which are, a pretty hefty increase from the stock tires. Stock tires would actually make great drift tires because they're shitty tires. But like I said, for the sake of the aesthetics and for the share screen, we're going drift tires. Now, with a drift build, especially with an all-wheel drive drift build, the front of the car matters a lot. Now, in terms of, you want the front of the car to keep its grip on the road, and you want the back to be able to move. It's actually, in my opinion, a lot easier to do this with an all-wheel drive car, because you can send power to the front wheels. And you can increase your grip with wider tires and everything, but sending power to the front wheels is sort of what helps keep it not only stable but moving forward, as opposed to just stable with the back sliding around. So what you want to do is be able to keep the front on a pivot basically as much as possible. You want lateral movement, but you want to be able to force the lateral movement. You want it to stay planted essentially and sort of rotate on a front pivot so the back slides easier and the front stays more planted. What are some ways to do that? The first thing I want to do in this case, and I'm doing this because we're trying to get the PI out of the way. We're trying to get the waste PI out of the way so we can put as much power in at the end. Now, I don't think it's going to be a problem, but we're doing it this way anyway because this is just how I do it. First thing we're going to do is max the front width on the tires. Now, this is not something that you do in a lot of cases for any reason at all, because as you can see, especially with the body kit, it's an extra 9 PI for the front width tires. But we want the front wheels to be as maneuverable as possible, as planted as possible, and have as much grip as possible. Now, the grip of the tires is great. And let me show you this for example. You can figure out the grip of the tires based relative to the grip of the other tires. So once you know the grip of your tire, though, you can figure out how much extra grip you have based on the extra surface area you're adding. So, you're getting something like 80% more surface grip with the wider front tires. So the front is staying planted. It's not going anywhere. Now, what we're going to do now is keep the back as thin as possible. Now, generally, on a car, on a road racing car, the first thing we would do is make the back tires as wide as possible, because usually you get a PI reduction from it and a grip increase from it. But in this case, we don't need the PI reduction, and we don't want the rear tires to stay grippier. We don't want them to stay more planted on the road. We want them to lose traction. We want them to be okay when they're in a straight line. We want them to lose traction when we want them to. We want it to happen relatively sooner than the front tires. So by making them less wide and the front ones wider, we're helping facilitate that. What we want to do with the rims. Now, there's two options here. The first option is you increase the front rim all the way. And what this does is it allows the car to go forward with the front wheel turning less times than the rear wheel, right? Bigger wheels need to turn less to cover the same amount of distance. I know it's hard for some people to visualize that sort of thing, but it's true. It's physics, it's math. The wheel has to roll less to travel the same amount of distance as the rear wheel. So if you increase the front wheel and leave the rear wheel as small as possible, again, the front of the car is moving forward it's setting the pace for the rate that it's moving, whereas the rear wheel is trying to keep up by spinning faster, making it more likely to lose traction if and when you allow it to. So in some ways, this makes it easier to drift, increasing the front wheel and leaving the back wheel small. However, it doesn't matter that much to me. I would rather keep it small for the stock look, and also because I have an easier time tuning the differential if the gear wheel and the front wheel, or the power wheel and the front wheel are the same size. Because the amount of power and the percentage you want on D-cell, if the wheels are the same, it's a lot easier to tune that. It's just way less guesswork involved. So we're going to leave these stock size, and we are also going to leave them stock look. Even though I'm sure I can find some cool rims in here that are lighter, it doesn't affect the final product that much. So I want to leave them stock size, stock hubcaps, basically, or if they're rims, whatever. I'm not even sure. Last thing we want to do with the wheels, again, for the sake of stability in the front and not the back, we want to increase the front width. Front width, again, if you think about it in terms of like the BMW Isetta or a 3-wheel car with the 2 wheels that are wide on the front, wider apart from each other, and the 2 wheels that are closer together in the rear, or a tricycle, the 2-wheel setup is the stable part, and the 1-wheel end is the sway part. So we want the stability in the front, so we widen the wheels, and we want more sway in the rear, so we keep them as narrow as possible. Again, usually this is a PI increase, so you don't always want to do this. We have wasted now 10 PI in the front where you ordinarily wouldn't want to do it. All right. Actually, I didn't add the body kit. So we got to add the body kit and now go back and do the tire width again. So it's even worse than I thought. It's 14 in the front width. Now, let's add our engine in just for the hell of it. First thing I want to go for is the max engine, see what it is. Racing V12. I like it. I'm going to use it only because I know how to gear it really well. Your power peaks in this game, you can be close. Your power is going to, your torque is going to peak at 7,500, and your power is going to peak at 10,500. Right? I know how to gear this like the back of my hand. That's why I'm going to pick it. You add the turbo, it doesn't really change the gearing at all. Because you're gearing for the power way at the second half of this graph. So I'm going with the turbo. Now, what do we do for aero? We have a diffuser, which is great. It really smooths out the way the back is going to sway. What you wouldn't like is that it's going to reduce the sway. It's going to keep the car anchored on the road better. But what you do like is that it's going to make the drift really predictable. It's going to keep the car planted really firmly and consistently across both tires. It's going to cut down on the deformity on the tire walls. That's going to occur naturally because we didn't increase the wheel size. So I like the diffuser a lot for any instance, but it does sort of create more of a firmly planted rear than you'd like. So we definitely don't want to add any more rear aero. I'm kind of inclined to remove this rear aero, but it's really minor. It doesn't even change the lateral G's at 120, removing the stock aero. So I'm going to leave it just because it looks cooler. You don't want to do this because this just keeps the wheels on the ground and makes it harder to drift. So now the assumption is that the body kit has front aero. I would have added it if it didn't. And the thought process behind that is the front aero not only keeps the wheels more firmly planted at around, starting almost immediately, but especially starting around 60 miles an hour. But above 60 miles an hour, it really starts to push down on the front of the car to the point that it starts to lift up the rear suspension. Ever so slightly, even if it's like, a quarter of an inch, it's allowing the wheels to travel up a little bit further, and it's allowing the tires to lose contact with the road. So whereas the car might function as a normal car up to a certain speed, around 60, it's going to start to drift on its own because of the gearing. And then above 60 up to 120 or so, it's going to start to drift even more because the front aero is pushing down more and lifting up the rear of the car. And I want to do this on purpose. Not sure if this is how people do things. I'm not a drift tuner. This is all just stuff from normal tuning that makes sense to me. And again, this is all relative to an all-wheel drive drift car. Don't really know much about rear-wheel drive drift cars in general. So for the transmission, obviously not going to use stock because we did an engine swap. Going to go with the 4-speed because I don't know about whether this affects all-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive, but I know for driving in auto, you want to stay in first gear as long as possible. So you're not downshifting and losing power and changing power. You want to be able to stay on your power increase in first gear for as long as possible. And four-gear drift transmission gives you the best option to do that, regardless of whether it says drift or not. And I don't think it says drift transmission on the anywhere on the tune on the screen where you'd be downloading the tune. So it's not necessarily for cosmetic effect, even though it does lend the word drift. But it does keep you in first gear for longer, which is what I'm focusing on for this build. Driveline, we'll just upgrade it. Drift diff, we'll just upgrade it. Let's go to drift suspension. This is good. The only difference between these suspensions, and I know people make a bigger deal out of them, the only difference is the weight and the range of the springs. That's literally it. A couple of them are a couple pounds heavier, and the range of the springs and the ride height. So the ride height range is really it. That's the difference. You choose the drift springs because you can get the lowest ride height, number one, and number two, because it says drift suspension on the screen, on the build screen. So when people see the tune, when they're assessing the tune, they see that it has a drift spring installed. And it's not that like you're feeding into some delusion per se, but they know that you have made decisions with a drift build in mind at the very least. And also, they call these things different things, like especially I'll show you the differentials these differentials are all the same. What you're choosing is a preset, basically. So you're choosing a race preset, you're choosing a drift preset, or you're choosing an off-road preset. It's the quickest way for them to give you a decent preset. You can see there's no weight involved. There's no difference in the simulation. So it's very similar with the suspensions. So I'm using the drift suspension, number one, because it's the lowest ride height, and number two, because it says drift. I do want to use the race anti-roll bars because we want to go really stiff in the rear. I'm not really sure what my final numbers are going to look like, but I almost always go race roll bars for a drift build. There's no reason not to go full race chassis and weight reduction on this build. Not always gonna do a weight reduction because a lot of the times it'll change the weight balance of the car really significantly in the wrong direction. But in this case, we're only going from 52 to 51. So what the weight reduction does in this case, since it doesn't really matter in terms of weight balance, what it does is it gives you, it makes it easier to drift at lower speeds. It allows you to get up to a driftable speed quicker, and it allows you more lateral movement to get the drift going. Since you don't have the rear weight to help you kick out, the overall weight doesn't really matter. It's actually sort of a detriment if you have a slower acceleration. And since this is like a low first gear acceleration, we don't have the weight to sort of counterbalance the slow acceleration and start your drift early. So we do that by decreasing the weight of the car and giving you more lateral maneuverability. because, like I said, it's only a 1% weight difference. It doesn't matter at all. I'd much rather have the car be 600 pounds lighter than 1% heavier in the front. 52% front is not a great drift weight, and 51% is not a great drift weight. It's a pretty normal standard weight, not very different. This is actually very uncommon that a full race weight reduction would give you only a 1% weight difference. Also, I like seeing that PI inch up closer to 900. We're going to see how close to 900 we can get. Spoiler alert, we're going to hit 900. I did this already. But for the sake of argument, while I'm doing the build, I want to get it as close to the max as possible in a race class. Because then that makes it usable. In this case, it would make it usable in open drift. It would make it usable in all sorts of PI restricted events, you know, and it would make it more attractive for those events. It's not that an 867 PI car can't be great in drift events. It's just that casual players might not understand that to a large extent. So you want to push it as close to top of class as possible. So we're going full weight reduction. Do I want to do anything about the brakes? They're not really going to matter, so I'm going to wait on the brakes. What is good about brakes is you get good weight reduction on race brakes, and you get brake balancing on weight brakes, which can help with drifting. It doesn't hurt to have your brakes balanced no matter what you're doing. So maybe we come back and add race brakes, maybe not. Let's go to the engine though. Let's see what we can fit in this car with this much PI room left. The first thing you want to upgrade is always your torque engine upgrades. And I don't know if they did this on purpose, but generally your highest torque, best power weight ratio upgrades are at the bottom. So you start here and work your way this way, or like here and then this way and then this way. But essentially your bottom row up to your boost, whether it's this or a supercharger or Ascent, is going to be your best torque, your best power weight. Even though they tend to add a lot more weight, like you can see here, they add a lot of weight, but they add a lot of power as well. And they add, better. This is where you're going to get most of your increase in speed from at this point. Your top speed comes number 1 from your engine choice, and number 2 from your charger choice, and number 3 from your aero choice. All these engine upgrades are not going to add a shitload of speed in the end, but you're going to get your best, again, your most bang for your buck from these heavy torque upgrades. So you always do these two first. Try to squeeze in the race anti-lag if you can, and we're doing really good. When you get up here, these are also good heavy, good power weight torque upgrades. Right up through your engine block, right? Past your engine block is where you start to get into the lighter components that'll give you more weight reduction and less power. Specifically, like your intake is going to give you generally weight reduction and low power, and a low PI increase, like usually 1 or 2 PI. This is the last thing you want to do usually. So we will increase that. I think we're going to fit the whole engine upgrade in. Yeah, okay. So we fit the whole engine upgrade in, whole upgraded turbo V12. So now we know we can't fit any more power. What do we do with our remaining PI? Let's add brakes. Okay, so the sport brakes give you a little bit of weight reduction. You get it to a nice, attractive, just under 3,000 pounds. Gives you better braking efficiency, whatever. That doesn't matter. This is a really throwaway upgrade. I can't think of anything else I'd rather do. I could put cooler rims on it. That's not going to really do much for the build. I kind of like the way the stock rims look with the color on the lower panel anyway. So this is our build, right? This is our build. What does it look like? Very high speed, low handling, bad launch because of the 4 gears, good acceleration though, because that first gear starts off slow, but it gets you to where you're going really well. All right. This works. We're down to 50%, which is good actually. It gives you a nice easy tipping point for the drift. And because it's all-wheel drive, you can actually adjust your tipping point better than with a rear-wheel drive car. That comes into like cutting off the power with your diff completely. It's all about cutting power with rear-wheel drive. But with the all-wheel drive, you can shift your power to the front, so you're getting pull in addition to the push on the rear. So you can not only control what sends you into a drift, but what pulls you out of a drift with the all-wheel drive. Power slide, should I say. So hold on, I'm just taking some notes here. All right. Install the setup. What was the torque on this thing? 618. It's low torque. It's very low torque. You know, since I did a trans swap, I need my wheel size. So to give this the simplest explanation possible for people who aren't really familiar with tuning, the transmission is a bunch of gears, right? Which is basically a bunch of wheels that turn each other. You have to think about your rear wheel or whatever wheel is powering your car. In an all-wheel drive setup, it's going to be the one that's getting the most power, which is still going to be the rear wheel. But your wheel is the first gear in the transmission. Just think of it as another gear. It's the biggest gear in the transmission. And the size of it feeds into the lowest gear in your stock transmission. So there's two things where you're going to need to re-gear that you change. Number one, if you change your rear wheel size, you need to re-gear. And number two, obviously, if you change your engine, your power curve, you're going to need to re-gear. You're going to not be using your stock transmission in either one of those cases. And we changed the stock transmission anyway to give it a better look on the selection screen. So it's a high top speed. All right. So I use for my tire pressure, I got used to using the tire model from Forza Tune that adjusts basically every 500 pounds. It adjusts. For the longest time, though, Forza Tune was not. It was doing like an average of the whole car, and it was giving you the same pressure for front and back for years and years and years, and I never understood it. And I think recently they changed it, so now they're giving you different front and rear tire pressures. Well, anyway, since this car is right around 3,000 pounds, I go 29 pressure times 2. Now there's no shift in any direction on this. So I'm not now, depending on the weight balance of the car, I might do this, I might do this. But since this is about as close to a 50-50 balanced car as you can get, we're just going to go with this, it's a slightly high pressure. But since the car is balanced, it should keep grip good on both. So there's no real decisions to be made about raising or lowering the pressure in the front or the back to counterbalance any sort of performance issues. A lot of people think that soft tires are more slidey. And while that's true, that's not really what you're trying to do with drifting. You want your tires to hold with drifting until they slide. And the best way to do that, and it actually kind of explains that in this description, I believe it says that in the description. I'm just waiting for it to come up here. Less forgiving, less grip. Loss of grip is more sudden. Okay, that's sort of what I'm trying to explain. You want the loss of grip to be a little more sudden in the rear. At least in my opinion, for the way I build these cars and for the way I know how to drift in all-wheel drive, like I've been saying, I don't want the car to sort of slide around, like slide into the drift slowly. Like I want to reach speed and then have the tires lose traction as I increase my speed. And that's one of the reasons I use more substantial front tires and front aero and not rear aero. So the tires lose traction at a higher speed, more suddenly at higher speed. So we're going with a higher and balanced tire pressure in this case. The gearing, again, this is really simple math on 4 gears. Especially on a V12, which I know like the back of my hand. Again, for if you have any way of doing this, if you give a shit, the torque peak is at 7,500 RPM and the power peak is at 10,500 RPM. That's close enough. You can get down into some very specific nitty gritty on this, but like I like the round numbers that I get out of that math. I have a whole chart for like what sort of power output all these engines give. It's really, this is shit you do over the course of years and years and years. This is stuff I haven't done a tuning video in years. Like this is all behind the curtain stuff that I don't even usually talk about, but I choose this engine mainly because it's very simple, especially with 4 gears. This is some of the there's basically a correct way to gear these cars, and the final drive is obviously sort of open to interpretation. And this is where some of the minute quirks of the tuning system sort of come into play here with the final drive. But you'll know what the numbers tell you your final drive should be. But then when you get there, you want to sort of travel around a little bit and see where it goes. You want to see if there's a bell curve. You want to see how it reacts in the range that you want. 946. But these numbers, this is correct. This is not going to change on a V12 with 4 gears. This is how you match your power graph. I guess you could do some other kind of gearing for some other application, but I don't know any other way, really. Again, I want my fastest 0 to 100, and I can trust the simulation numbers on a 4-gear transmission. Until they do something like that. Sorry, sometimes these things don't react the way you're gonna. This is why you shouldn't like rely on tuning calculators, because they're not gonna do these cars aren't gonna do what you think they're gonna do. And if you're just blindly entering numbers, you're gonna run into trouble. All right. So when I can't choose, when I have a hard time choosing a final drive, especially when it gets up into this really high range. So ideally, the number that I'm working with here is somewhere in the 472 to 475 range should give you your best option to maintain your top speed and keep your best, range of 0 to 100. So it looks like I'm hitting top speed at 478. And then it's going back down from there. So I'm going to go with 478 because that's where I hit top speed. It's the closest number to my median final drive that preserves my top speed. Now, if I go any higher than this, the top speed starts to drop and does not come back up. Now, that might be okay for a drift build, but I don't think it's necessary in this case. I'll do that after testing, but I want to sell the top speed as well. It's another number that pops up on the screen. And again, not to be cynical, but that's something that people pay attention to. So we're going to leave it at 4.78 for now. It's like slightly higher and slightly lower than I thought it would be. It's a weird number, but I don't know. We'll keep going. This is not bad. I'm gonna go a little bit lower on this, just because I'm not like a big stance guy, and I don't need the turn in really, because of all the things we've done. Some people would like push this all the way to 5. I don't know. What do I want to do here? I don't need the full turn in because we've done things like the front arrow and stuff like that. I don't think it's necessary. I think I'm going to lose too much traction that way. Steering angle, you always want all the way up. The toe is not important. We're going to leave the toe at 0. The steering angle, we're always going to have at 7 on a drift build. I could have left this stock, but I just want to bring it down by half a degree. It doesn't need to be as exaggerated because of other considerations we've made. ARBs. First thing we're going to do is push the rear all the way to the back. And hold on, I'm just doing some math in my head here. Yeah, 45 is fine. Somewhere between 40 and 50. So I again, this is something that you could see I'm kind of using very round numbers. Like these are very stock gear numbers. They're probably not going to get adjusted, but they always could. I try to use these sort of stock gear numbers though, and then just adjust the final drive. Again, with this, the -5, -1.5 was fine. Since I wanted to turn it down though, I went in a pretty solid increment. I'm not like getting carried away with the details, and I probably won't. Anti-roll bars, I wanted to use the full rear as my sort of baseline for the front, and relative to the full. So like you want to simplify tuning. You don't want to get carried away. It's one of the things that's wrong with tuning calculators is people getting carried away with the minutia. Like you don't need the minutia unless you're at a really highly competitive level. I've obsessed over minutia on some tunes, but like they were like, top 10 or 20 rivals tunes. Like it's not that serious in most cases. So in this case, the benefits of choosing doing a full 65 rear ARB is it gives you a really solid baseline to do everything else relative to. And that's what you want to do with tunes is like find your points of consistency and then do everything else relative to those points of consistency. And tires is a good place to have your consistency. Rear anti-roll bar is a good place to have your consistency. And for now, that's good enough. But in a lot of cases, a lot of classes from D class all the way up to S2, for drag tunes, for drag tire race tunes, for cross country tunes, full 65 rear is the way to go because it gives you a baseline for consistent performance. You get it? You can make adjustments. You can adjust things relative to that one thing, and it'll give you not only solid, consistent performance, but noticeable relative adjustments as you go. Okay. Springs, again. What we're doing by tightening the back is trying to make it like, you know how I said the car will lose traction as the front arrow pushes down, and it'll lose traction because the tire pressure is higher in the back. It'll snap. It'll lose quicker. We're counting on those things to be accelerated and exacerbated by tightness in the rear of the car. And tighter springs will make it bump up off the ground quicker. So we're gonna. This looks like a good balance, but more for like a race tune. I might leave this alone if it were a race tune, but I want to tighten up the back. So we're gonna go right up to 1,000 with this, just as a nice round number. It's about halfway up the range, right? It's right in the middle. We'll go with 1,000, and we might want. Do we want to leave the front where it is? No, we'll drop to 700. And I'll explain one of the reasons I did that is because the number I'm working with, even though this is a 50-50 weight balance, the number that I'm working with to get the car to behave the way I want it to work is 70%. I don't know how to express it in terms of balance, but I want the front suspension to be 70% of the rear suspension, and that's on the ARBs and the springs. And the reason I want to do this, whereas this is a 50-50 car, and for a race suspension, you might want a nice 50-50 balance on these things. I want a tighter, since I want the rear tighter, I'm shifting it 20% toward the rear to make sure that the rear rises up off the road better and loses traction when I want it to. I don't want it to be that well balanced. You know what I mean? Like I want it to become unbalanced, but I want it to do it when I want it to do it. And by raising it up and making it tighter, it's going to do it in an instant, basically, when I hit the handbrake. It's not going to do it gradually. It's not going to do it, be all slidey and shit, but it's going to start to drift when I want it to. And that's why we're going to keep the back tight and have it lose traction in an instant. And this is going to help accomplish that. So we're softening the front, we're keeping it planted, and we're tightening the rear, and we're making it bounce up off the ground a little bit more. And these are all very subtle things. This is not like an exaggerated thing. This is like I said back at the beginning, if you're pushing down a couple extra 100 pounds of aero on the front of the car, it's only going to raise the rear. It's going to give the rear suspension like an extra, I don't know, quarter inch of travel, but it's enough. The tires are coming up off the ground ever so slightly more. It's exactly what you want. Ride height, leave it low. It's going to be at the lowest setting possible automatically on these springs. See, we're keeping it simple. We're not getting carried away with these tunes. You probably thought, oh, I brought up Forza Tune right away. I learned a lot of things from Forza Tune. I also learned something important from Forza Tune is not to overcomplicate things, because you can really fuck yourself over. I might not even be using these adjustable upgrades for myself. I'm kind of doing it for the lesson and for the plot and for the selection screen when people are looking at the tune. Anyway, we're going nice and simple though. You could see it. So again, 45 is 70% of 65. 700 is obviously 70% of 1,000. The damping, this is another thing that I learned. 9.8 divided by 14.1. I have spreadsheets that expounded upon a lot of this stuff. Like I took the Forza Tune math, and this is a long time ago. And if you want to go back and watch the video I did about Seppi's Forza Tune video, I went through a whole thing where I chased a world record with a Forza Tune build math. It was not bad, but I made a lot of adjustments. There was a couple things I really liked about it. I made a couple adjustments to it. I sent a lot of the feedback to the Forza Tune guy, and he made adjustments to his math, and he thanked me in the notes. So I do have a good dialogue with the guy, but I do not rely on his math exclusively. But again, there's a certain element to his suspension math which I like, and what it does is it bases the rear. I'm basing the rear on weight, and then I'm adjusting the front relative to the rear. And in this case, the rear, I know this off the top of my head. The rear is going to put me around 14. The rear weight on a 3,000-pound car that's 50-50 balance. And the front, I want to be 70% of that is going to be around 10. We'll just go with that. I'm not going to get into doing the math. And then for a drift build, we're coming in at a flat 6 on both. And this is something that's a little bit uncommon, but this is for a drift build. But as far as rebound stiffness, it's the same 70% number that I use relative to the rear weight this is only for a drift build, mind you, because we're trying to tilt the weight of a 50-50 car basically. So now we get to the aero. I'm going to max the aero out in the front for no other reason than I want to initiate that drift as soon as possible in that long first gear, because I have a very long first gear, and I want to stay in that gear as long as possible. So I want to be drifting as long as possible. I want to initiate the drift as early as possible in the gear. With it maxed out like this, I'm going to get the maximum push on the front of the car between 60 and 120 miles an hour. Where is the gear? Where does first gear go to? Around 60. Okay. So this is going to give me maximum in first gear, maximum push on the car. I could have it lower if first gear was going up further. If first gear were climbing up closer to 100, but we're going to go max aero is going to give you the most immediate effect, pushing down on the front of the car and lifting up the back. This is going to send us into drift even earlier in first gear. You can see that's the theme, is initiating the drift. I know that sounds elementary, but that's what we're trying to do. Brake, nothing needed. Brake was a cosmetic weight reduction upgrade, basically. The differential, what do they do here for the stock differential? Stock diff is always going to be different on these cars. I don't quite understand why they do it the way they do here. I don't think there's any benefit to a 0-3 decel or cutting power. I go straight 10, 10, 100, 100 on this sort of thing. This is another thing I learned from Forza Tune. The one thing that they can't, this is not very relevant. You could do open if you wanted to, but I think it's better to do an even diff. And this is where it comes back into what I said earlier about when you're doing the wheel upgrades, why you want the front and rear wheels to be the same size. It allows you to do a much more basic differential setup. I would have to do a lot more experimenting with this if the front and rear wheels were different size. But I know I'm going to get the perfect decel, and Excel is going to flow right into each other doing this with the same wheel size. Now, what I want to do with this is I'm going to actually trust the sim, and I want to back up my my rear diff as far as possible until I start to lose 0 to 100, which is right here. Maybe. Now you want to go back and forth between your diff and your gearing to sort of get an idea of what different final drives might look like in terms of shifting your center balance, center power distribution. So what I'm looking at now is a lower final drive. Yes, so a lower final drive, which keeps you in first gear longer. And 331 is a very common final drive ratio. And in this case, it's actually giving us a really good simulation result on a bell curve, which is uncommon. So what I want to do now is I want that simulation number. You see how it's going back and forth? When I go from 3.31 to 3.30, it's going back and forth from 4.5 to 4.737. That means I'm right on the precipice of being in the right gear, being in the right final drive with the right rear diff balance. So what you want to do is go back and forth between your rear diff and your final drive, and try to find one that gives you your preferred 0 to 100 in your preferred gear. And it might not exist for a lot of reasons. And one of those reasons might be front aero, because we maxed out our front aero. If we go back to stock front aero, do we get any fucking change? If we minimize aero, do we get any change? These are the three things I'm going to rule out before I move on to another solution. We have no change. Okay, so we are going back to maximum front aero. I know it looks like I'm moving around arbitrarily, but what I'm trying to do is get a feel for the range of where. So if you gear your car correctly, you're going to gear it. You can over gear a car basically to where you're right on the edge of the power, and you fuck yourself over, and it's much easier to fall out of gear and out of the power band you're in. And you can tell where that number is. So the simulation they give you is not like an end all be all correct number. It's not an accurate number, but what it is accurate, not in and of itself, it's accurate relative to itself. So you know that from your starting point, you're getting an accurate measure of difference. So you might not accelerate to 100 at 4.563 seconds. That might not literally be true, but you know that it's going to be faster than this. So it may not be exactly 5.563, but it's going to get you there quicker than this one. So while it may not be specifically correct, it's relatively correct. You understand what that means? So we passed at 70% at 3.30. Might be our best bet. Interesting. Increasing the aero increased the 0 to 100. Which makes sense as you go further back with the center diff to a certain point, but not the way it's doing it currently. Anyway, this is what we're going to start with. I would rather be at 70% with a 331 final diff. Okay, I like this. I can settle. I would rather this be off and this be here. And I actually like this better too. This looks like the correct gearing. So, like I said, these gear numbers were correct. This should be 233. But my preferred final drive is 331. There's a lot of little quirks in this game, which is why you should not rely on tuning calculators. And it's possible I could find better, slightly better numbers for these, but these are going to be less important than these two because your final drive is important. And in this case, because of the nature of the tune, first gear is very important. So we're still at 77. 77 I like. This is the build we're going with. We'll take you through it again just so you could see it. 29 tire pressure, 331 final drive. Again, this is for an all-wheel drive drift build, full front width tires, front aero, no rear aero, full weight reduction, 4 gears. You know what I mean? Like, this is very specific kind of build. So this gearing, it's not what I would usually do, but so it's 331, 232, 1 1/4, 8565. Again, these last 2 gears really not important. This maybe, this and this are the most important things. This because of how it relates to the center diff, and this because we're up above 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, we're well up close to 100 miles an hour on first gear, which is exactly where I want to be. This means my 0 to 100 sim is a good drift sim. It's good within the range of my drift before it kicks into the second gear, which I don't really want to happen. So paying attention to my 0 to 100 sim has been the right thing to do in this case. It's not always the right thing to do, but since I'm going to be staying in that speed range in that gear, in one gear, you're actually getting a pretty accurate representation. Alignment, I changed my camber a little bit. I lowered it, but I kept the steering angle at full. I kept the toe at straight up. Some people get carried away with this shit. I don't really know. Anti-roll bars, again, stiffening up the front, and then imbalancing it 20% toward the rear. So I'm making the front suspension number 70% of the rear number because I want the rear to lose traction and the front to stay more planted. And this helps it raise up off the ground. So 65, full blast. It's a good relative setting, helps you make other adjustments with that as a baseline to the way that your car is going to handle in terms of the rear. The springs, again, stock was around 700, which is great for a 50-50 car, balanced car. I wanted to keep you can generally trust that the front is a nice, soft, normal setting. So I thought I'd push up the rear to 1,000 to preserve that 70% front rear. Ride height, low as possible. Whoops. Ride height as low as possible. Damping, again, based on weight, just like my tire pressure was based on weight. This setting is 14, which makes this 70% of 14, which is 10. Again, there are slightly better ways to calculate it. I didn't have the full weight in front of me. I didn't have a calculator in front of me. Not important. This is close enough for an all-wheel drive fun drift build. 6.6 on the rear. Again, it's weight-based. I'm not going to get into the actual formula, but this should give... You could back... fucking, what do they call it? Reverse engineer all this shit if you want. I don't care anymore. Full front arrow again to push down between 60 and 100, a little bit more, help you get that drift going. And the diff, 10, 10, 100, 100. We kept it simple by keeping the front and rear wheels the same size, makes an easy drift tune. We pushed the balance as far as we could to 77 before we lose time on the acceleration with the sim in our preferred final drive. That is how it works. Let's take it for a spin. Let's check out the paint job first. This is like a real classic fucking live stream. I like the white. Let's go white. I'm sure somebody's complaining about some fucking detail on this already. I know they're all not happy about the manual transmission. What can I add to this car? I don't like the fucking wheels. Fucking carving this shit up. There we go. No longer a sleeper with the fucking diffuser and the carbon all over it. Somebody putting a couple $100,000 into their $15,000 Toyota. Do I have any? Whoops. Yeah, sorry, can't get on the server. Do I have any points? Yeah. You know what? Let's go nuts. There are no rules. Oh, yeah. I guess the one thing I could say is that I don't really know how to drift, but like you could see it's built for it, it's balanced for it. It's not really my cup of tea. I don't practice it enough to be able to do it that well, but it definitely does what I want it to do. You can see it's like sort of a normal car. Forgot about that hump there. It's sort of a normal car up to a certain speed, and then it starts to drift. I'm not even touching the steering. This is honest. Like I know. It's like stupid. I keep repeating like a lot of tuning really is math, and I kept repeating the number, 70%. That actually helps on the suspension. Like all the little things I did, keep the car balanced the way you want it balanced at the speed you want it. That's like literally the whole point. I don't know how else to explain it, but well, anyway, there's your fucking Toyota Chaser drift build tune. Since I am fucking not going to be able to share a tune for the next 30 days, probably, go make your own or download the one that's currently at the top of the rankings by the 3-time Horizon Festival champion Darius Flint, apparently. Shout out Darius Flint. So, yeah. Big fun live stream. Thank you for tuning in, I guess. I'm going to port this over to YouTube. And I'm looking forward to seeing how this is resolved and editing this video and going to make a decision about really how much detail to go into based on how they respond to this situation. But I don't know. I don't have any fucking faith that they're going to do the right thing. And I'm sort of losing patience with doing the right thing in this game because of the way other people do things. So that's where we're at. I'll have another update soon. Fuck it. Have a good one.